Hello everybody, this is Mr. Thompson, and this video I am posting in order to maybe help us a little bit have more time during our Google Meet to go over some material. And I felt like this video would be important to kind of help you get a precursor to what the lesson is going to be about. So what we're going to cover in this video is how to turn decimals into fractions, fractions into decimals, and decimals into percents. Okay, so this is information that you probably would have touched a little bit of last year, but it's information that you are going to go over with me just for our very first unit. So I know that we have already done maybe a little bit of math, maybe just warm up exercises. So this is really the first amount of material that we're going to cover that's going to actually be going towards our first unit. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. While I'm doing this, you actually have these exact notes, and they're posted either to the Google Classroom and they've been sent out to you. So this is going to be important for you to follow along and take notes with me as I go through. Okay, so if you have any questions or concerns, you can pause the video, rewind it, go over it again. And like I said, these are just being posted so that so that during our lessons that we can have more time to get into material rather than taking our notes. So this is just our notes section. So if you would please follow along, and if you have any questions along the way, we're going to have Google Meets later on that we can actually go over the material a little bit more in depth if you have any questions. Okay, so the very first thing we're going to talk about is how to turn a fraction into a decimal. Okay, so whenever we're going to talk about turning a fraction into a decimal, we're really going to have to talk about numerators and denominators. Okay, so a numerator, for those of us that might have already forgotten, is going to be the top number in a fraction. Okay, so the number that's at the very top is going to be our numerator. And then the bottom number is going to be our denominator. So say I have the fraction 1/3. The numerator is going to be 1 and the denominator is going to be 3. So 1/3, or numerator 1, denominator 3. So in order for us to turn this fraction into a decimal, I'm going to have to take the numerator and divide it by the denominator. Okay, so I'm going to have to take my 1 and divide it by 3. So let's go ahead and do that. You can punch it into your calculator. So 1 divided by 3 is going to give us 0.33, or 0.33. Okay, let's go ahead and practice with these 3 problems. And like I said, at any point in time, if you need to pause and go over it again, that's okay. Just rewind it. This is, like I said, posted out here so that we have more time during our Google Meet. So if we look at our 3 fractions we have 1/2, 3/4, and 1/4. So the red is going to be our numerator, so that top number. And the blue is going to be our denominator, or that bottom number of our fraction. Okay, and then the in-between line, that's our divisor, or that's our, you're going to divide 1 divided by 2. So here we go. What is 1 divided by 2? Well, 1 divided by 2, punch in your calculator, is 0.5. How about 3 divided by 4? 0.75. And then our last one, 1 divided by 4, or 0.25. Okay, so you took the numerator and you divide it by the denominator to get our answer, or our decimal. So we just turned our fractions into a decimal in each one of these. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and clear my screen so we can go ahead and move down. Okay, now how about the opposite? How do we change a decimal now into a fraction? Well, in order to turn a decimal into a fraction, we have to look at the numbers after the decimal point first, okay? So we're gonna look at the number right after the decimal point, okay? So in this case, right after our decimal point comes it's 0.9, that's the number we're looking at. In this case, 73, and in this case, 3. So it's the number that comes after our decimal point, which is going to become our numerator, or our top number of our fraction. In order for us to find our denominator, we are going to have to, let me grab my text box, we're going to have to look at our place value. Okay, we're going to have to look at our place value. What I mean by that is, if we take a look at our chart down here, we're going to be focusing on what comes after, sorry, I'm trying to scroll in here. Okay, here we go. So what numbers come after our decimal point? Okay, so these are going to be units that we're going to use to place inside of our fraction. So for instance, we have the tenths place, the hundredths place, it's missing a T, but the thousandths place. So these are after our decimal point. So we have the tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. So when we're looking at a decimal point, first thing we're going to do is we are going to turn our first number into our numerator. So if you look, we have 0.9, so that 9 is going to be our numerator, or our number on top. Put our divisor line. And then we're going to look at the place value. Well, this is 0.9. It ends in the 9 right here. Okay, there's nothing after this. So I'm going to look at my point here. So 0.9 falls just like the 4 did in the tenths place. So we would put 9 tenths. Okay, next thing we're going to do on this one is we're going to look at our number that comes after the decimal, which is 73. So 73 is going to be our numerator. Now we got to find our place value. So 7, 3, 3 is where it ends. So we're looking over 2 after the decimal point. So if you look over here, 1, 2 after the decimal point, the 5 here represents our hundredths place. So this would be 73 over 100, or 73 hundredths. Lastly, let's look at this one. It says 0.03. Okay, so you're not going to write as your numerator 0.3, you're just going to write 3. And since it ends the second over from the decimal point, that's our hundredths place. So it would be 3 hundredths. Okay. Now let's go ahead and move down. We are going to move down to our next section here. And it says when you have a number in front of the decimal point, so how do we turn a decimal that has a number in front of the decimal point into a fraction? What do? Well, the first thing is you're going to want to make it a mixed number. Okay, so make it a mixed number. So the number in front of the decimal point is going to be your whole number. Okay, so you're going to make it a mixed number. So the number in front of the decimal point is going to be your whole number. So you're going to follow these steps to write the fraction part. So first thing is you're going to look at the number in front of, so right here in front of the decimal point. So in front of our decimal point is a 6. So the first thing that I'm going to write is a 6. And then we're going to look at the place value for the second part. Okay, so if we have 6 as our whole number, well, the fraction part, just like we did up here, is going to remain the same. So 6 over 3 is the number right after the decimal point. And then what place value do we have? Well, it's in the tenths place, so it would be 6 3 tenths. Okay, so that 6.3 as a fraction is 6 3 tenths. Same thing over here, so 83 is going to be our whole number. And then we're going to do the same thing after. So 93 is going to be our numerator, the number right after the decimal point. And then the place value ends in 93, so 2 places after the decimal point, which is going to be the hundredths. So 83 and 93 hundredths. Looking at this one, the 27, or the number in front of the decimal point, is our whole number. So 27, same thing that we did up here. 6 is the number that comes after our decimal point, and it's in the hundredth spot, 2 away from the decimal. So 27 and 6 100ths. And then lastly on this one, we're going to take a look. 6 is the number in front of the decimal point, so that's our whole number. 5 is the number after the decimal point, so that's our numerator. And the place value is in the tenths column, so 6 and 5 tenths. If we wanted to simplify, you could look at this one here. And in order to simplify, we're looking to see what numbers go into both. So I know that, let's see, top here, I've got 2 goes into it, right? Well, 2 times what gives us 6? So this would be 27 and 3, okay? Because 2 times 3 equals 6. And since 2 goes into 6 3 times, well, how many times does 2 go into 100? Well, 50, right? So 27 and 3 over 50. Okay, so that would be our simplified version. Going ahead and clearing our screen. Scroll down here. Now, how do we change a decimal into a percent? Well, first thing we could do is you could take your calculator and you could take this decimal, so simply just type 0.25 and multiply it by 100, and that would give you your answer, or that would then give us our percent. Or you can move the decimal point 2 places, 2 places to the right. Okay, so you're going to move your decimal point 2 places to the right, or you can multiply by 100. Well, for the sake of the video, we'll go ahead and do our second one. So we're going to move 2 places to the right. So you're going to do that based off of where your decimal point is located. So since it's located 0.25, well, you're going to locate that decimal point, and you're going to do, I call them swoops over. So swoop 1 place. So we're moving 1 unit over, 2 units over, and we can put our decimal point right after that. Okay, so we're moving that decimal point 2 spots. So 1, 2, and we're left with 25 because the decimal point is after the 5 now, not in front of the 2, and that's going to be percent. So 25%. So 0.25 would be 25%. Same thing here. So we're going to move it 2 places. So 1, 2. When we don't have a number in the place value that we swoop over to, we're going to put a 0 every time. Okay, so in this case, 0.90 would go here. So if we did 1, 2, after the 0, we put a decimal, we'd have 90%. Then looking at 8.6 here, we're going right where, now, before we didn't have a whole number in front of our decimal point, but now we do. So I don't want you to get confused. We do the same thing. We go off of where the decimal point is located. Okay, don't go off of where the whole number is. So the decimal point is right here. So we're going to move over 2 units. So 1, 2. So this would be 860%. Notice how I put that 0. It's a bad 0. So 860%. Do you notice how I had to fill that 0 in the place value, just like I did with the 90 here? Okay. Now looking over here, we're going to take our decimal point. We're going to move over 1, 2 again. So we'd have 93.4%. Okay. Let's go and move on and talk about how do we change a percent into a decimal. So in order to change a percent by decimal, we're going to do the opposite of what we did to turn a decimal to a percent. So since we multiplied by 100 to change the decimal to a percent, in order to change the percent to the decimal, we're going to divide by 100. So do the opposite. Or you can move the decimal point 2 places again, except this time we would go 2 places. If the last time was to the right, we'd do 2 places to the left. Okay, so let's give it a shot. To clear my screen to scroll down. So if we have 95%, first thing I would like us to do is take our decimal point and put it at the end of our numbers. Okay, just kind of helps us. Okay, so if I look at my decimal point and I know I can either multiply it by or divide 95 by 100, 30 by 100, 102 by 100, and 4 by 100, or if we're going to do it without a calculator, we would just take this decimal point and move 2 places to the left and place the decimal point there. So we go 1, 2, and put the decimal point in front, so 0.95, 1, 2, be 0.30, 1, 2, it'd be 1.02, and 1, 2, it would be 0.04. And once again, notice how I'm putting 0 in place of those values that we don't have anything there. Okay, so we just had a quick little overview of how do we turn a fraction into a decimal into a fraction, a decimal that has a number in front of the decimal point. For instance here, a whole number in front of our decimal point, a decimal to a percent, and a percent to a decimal. Okay, so you should have filled in your notes for that portion. And our next notes, we will be talking a little bit about ratios. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and we will get into our Google Meet. Thank you.